Hello everyone, it's Nina. Thanks so much for joining me today. Today I have a card to share with you featuring a faux letterpress technique. This is a technique that you can use to create the look of letterpressing with your dies. This results in a beautiful design for your cards, really making your coloring or your stamping stand out. And I think this is a really fun technique that you'll enjoy, so let's get started. I'm going to be using the Happy Holidays stamp and die set from Hero Arts. I'm also going to be pairing this with a couple of other new Hero Arts products, and I'll have them all linked in the video description and also at the Simon Says Stamp blog, so be sure to head on over there to check it out. I'm going to be starting off by doing some stamping using the Holidays stamp set. I'm going to take that large holly leaf that has a bunch of different berries and holly leaves springing out of it, and I'm going to stamp this in some willow ink from Simon Says Stamp. Now the reason I'm doing the stamping in this green ink is because I'm going to be doing some no-line coloring. And this is a really easy way to do no-line coloring when you use an ink that's going to be your predominant color in the coloring that you're going to be doing. In this particular case, I'm going to be doing a lot of green, and it's going to be the lightest color out of all the other colors that I'm choosing. So the berries and the branches that I'm going to then color as well, those are all going to cover over that green ink, and the result is going to be this gorgeous no-line coloring that was really easy to see, because if you use a really light ink, it can be very difficult to see, and I currently need some new glasses, so this has helped me a lot, been helping me be able to go ahead and do my no-line coloring techniques and still be able to see it very easily. Now I'm going to be doing some simple shading here using my Copic markers. I've chosen a few different green shades that match the willow ink, and I'm going to go ahead and start blending those out. I started off with the lightest color and colored in the leaves fully with that color, and now I'm shading in with some of my darker colors. My next darkest color is going to be YG63. This is going to be my mid-tone color out of all the other colors that I'll be using to color in these holly leaves. I'm also going to bring in a little bit of YG95, and this is going to add a slightly yellowish tint to the leaves, and I think it helps add a little bit of variation to the coloring and really helps them have a more realistic look, because if you look at a leaf in real life, it's going to have different shades of greens and other colors mixed into the full green color tone of the actual leaf. And then for my darkest color, I'm using YG99, and this is going to add those deepest, darkest shadows to the areas that I'm coloring. And I'm using this very sparingly because I don't want this to overpower the rest of my coloring. You go very lightly when you're using your darkest color. And you can see here that my marker actually bled a little bit, and I almost panicked when for a second there I was thinking, oh no, I have to start all over. But I was able to go ahead and figure out that the tag that I'm going to be die cutting this pattern out of was going to end up not catching most of that little splotch of color. So I'm okay with the fact that it did bleed. If it had been somewhere else, I might have tried to hide it a little bit and maybe use my colorless blender to lighten it. But since it was over in that corner, I wasn't too concerned. I'm going to go ahead and shade in all the berries with a couple of red markers, and then I also colored in the stems of the leaves with the brown markers that I have here, which are E35 and E47. Once my coloring was finished here, I'm going to take the new Infinity dies from Hero Arts. These are basically a bunch of nesting dies in the same shape that can be used to go ahead and nest into each other to create some really fun results. This tag I'm going to go ahead and use as the biggest one that's in the set. I'll go ahead and run this through my Big Shot machine. And now it's time to go ahead and start doing our letterpressing. I'm taking the tab 1 here from my Big Shot platform, and I'm going to add the Sizzix Textures impression plate on top. I'm not using any cutting plates yet. Here I'm also going to take the Textures rubber silicone mat, and I'm going to add that right on top of the texture plate. I'll lay my tag right on top, and then I'm going to take the die that I'm going to use that matches up with these stamped images and place that right over top, almost as if I was going to die cut this. However, because we have the texture plate and also the impression pad, the little rubber mat, that's going to prevent this die from actually die cutting, and instead it's going to make an impression into our paper. So I'll go ahead and run this through my Big Shot machine. I'm just holding it down to make sure it doesn't shift. You could also tape it if you want to. And then after I remove the die, you can see the beautiful texture that you have around the stamped image that creates this really fun letterpress look. And over on the back side, you can see it did not cut through. I'm going to go ahead and repeat this for all of the different images that are in this pattern here that I've created. I'll just shift the die up and down to the different areas to cover up the leaves, and then go ahead and run that through my Big Shot machine until I have them all textured. Here's the finished tag. I'll zoom in here so you can see the texture of it. I love how this really outlines the dies beautifully and really highlights that coloring and stamping that we've done to create this fun background. Okay, so next it's time to go ahead and die cut a few more elements for our tag. I'm going to put a metal adapter plate underneath my cutting mat. This is going to help with my intricate die that I'm going to be using here from the Piece Stampin' Cuts die set from Hero Arts. I'm going to take some glitter paper here from American Crafts, and glitter paper can be a bit difficult to die cut. Just the way that the texture of the paper is and the thickness of this particular kind makes it a little bit more difficult. But having that metal adapter plate underneath your cutting mat, it really helps make sure that you get a really nice clean impression and it cuts through perfectly. So here you can see that beautiful intricate piece die that we're going to go ahead and use on our tag. Next, I'm also going to die cut the little hole reinforcers that are going to go on the top of my tag. I'm die cutting these from some brown cardstock. This is a light brown color, and I'm going to end up die cutting 2 of these. You could die cut just one of them if you wanted to, but for this particular tag, I wanted to go ahead and have one on both the front side and the back side because I think it just helps finish it off really nicely. To attach these down, I'm just going to put some liquid glue along the back side of the hole reinforcers. This is some PPA matte adhesive. It's my favorite liquid glue. And I'll go ahead and glue these down to the front and back side of my tag around the holes that were die cut when we die cut this using the infinity tags. Next, I've got a piece of vellum here and these My Favorite Things basic stitch line dies. This is the double stitch line. And this piece of vellum, you can see, was actually a scrap, but I'm going to end up using it as a banner. And I'll go ahead and do some little notches along each side of the banner to go ahead and create a flag end. And all I do is I cut a little slit up the center of the piece of paper, and then I cut along each side to go ahead and meet it in that center line, and that creates the perfect banner shape. I'll go ahead and layer that up onto my tag. As you can see here, what we'll do is I'm going to take some liquid glue and apply this down onto the little piece die, and I've already attached my vellum banner onto the tag using some regular adhesive. I'm just going to run that liquid glue all the way around, and then I'll go ahead and pick up the die and press it down right into our tag. Now I also did end up taking a clear block that I used for stamping and applying this over top of the piece die just to go ahead and make sure it adhered down onto the vellum well, and I just did that until it dried completely. Now here I'm taking a new background stamp from Hero Arts, and I'm going to take some Simon Says Stamp Schoolhouse Red ink. You can see here I've also die cut a piece of Simon Says Stamp Schoolhouse Red cardstock using that same infinity die that we used for our little hollyberry one. And I'm going to press this down right into the stamp that I've already inked up with that Schoolhouse Red ink. And you can also see on the left hand side that I was kind of playing around with another card base than what I ended up with in the finished card. And that's just kind of part of my card process, is that I kind of play around with things until I get the desired look that I'm looking for. So that gold pattern that you see there in the background, that was actually created with a Hero Arts stencil. And I didn't end up using that, but I did save it so that way I can use it for another card later on. So now it's time to add a little bit of embellishing to my tag. I'm taking a piece of red ribbon here. This is some satin ribbon at 1/2 inch wide. And I'm also tying a piece of gold bow wire inside of that little ribbon that we've tied into an overhand knot. I'm going to tie a bow with the gold bow wire, and I'll go ahead and fix that and fiddle with it until I have it looking the way I like. I want it to be fairly small because it's going to be layered with the red ribbon, and I want the ribbon to be able to be seen fairly well underneath. So now I'm taking my Tim Holtz scissors and I'm going to trim these ribbon ends into an angle, and this just helps kind of finish it off. And I like how the angle of the ribbon cutting really makes this tag have a little bit more of an elegant look rather than cutting it straight across. I'm going to layer up my 2 tags together with some ATG adhesive. I'll go ahead and layer those up. And then I'm going to take my card base, which is a Nina Desert Storm cardstock, and I'm going to ink this up with some Simon Says Stamp clear ink. The reason I'm using clear ink for the stamping, and this is that same floral stamp set from Hero Arts, the reason I'm using the clear ink is because I want to have the pattern that's on the card base be very subtle, almost like a watermark. So this clear ink from Simon Says Stamp is perfect for that because it's meant for embossing, but it's also meant for watermarking. So I'll have a nice tone-on-tone impression once I stamp this down and remove the paper from the stamp. You can see it has this gorgeous tone-on-tone design using that same stamp set that we used for the tag. And I really think this adds a nice finishing touch to the actual design. It's time to layer these up together, so I'm taking my ATG adhesive once again and applying this to the back side of my tags. I'll go ahead and attach those down onto the left-hand side of my card. And then I'm going to scatter a bunch of Pretty Pink Posh Sparkling Clear Sequins. This is the Sparkling Clear mix. And I'll go ahead and add these onto my card using some glossy accents. Finally, I'm going to take some glossy accents and apply that onto the berries of these holly leaves. And that's going to finish up the card. So I hope you've enjoyed and got some inspiration on creating some faux letterpress looks with your stamps and dies to create some really beautiful backgrounds. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section below and head on over to the Simon Says Stamp blog where you can get more information on this card, including still pictures and products used. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can connect with us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, as well as our blog. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.